When I said you used to come back and tell me about all the wonderful things that was happening with you at the shelter, and you said, do you know why I said that to you? So maybe wherever you want to start to explain that.
Okay, so let's go back to, I think I was maybe ninth grade, maybe a little earlier.
I think you're at Picacho, so I think you're in middle school.
I was just before high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I was in the youth shelter in our area. That's a place where it's a short-term placement. Courts had us. Yeah, I got pulled out of the house, and that was where I ended up. There's a story before that, I'm sure. At some point, we'll talk about it. But yeah, I got to a point where I was like, hey, man, the world exists out here a little bit different than what we're used to seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was gone and spent a lot of time in the shelter and then later on foster cares and whatever else. But at that point in time, we had awesome treats. I was in a government program, and I didn't know what to think or what was going to be expected of me. But man, the life was great. We had video games, we had awesome food and stuff. And I'm saying this because we didn't have that at home.
Yeah.
We didn't even have food sometimes. Like, it was bad. Like,
Oh, no.
And I know you know what? It goes further back than that. But yeah, at the timeline, at that point in the timeline that you're talking about, yeah, I would go back and tell you like, hey man, you have to get out of there. You have to come.
So you think that's where it came from? You're mostly just letting me know like, hey, life is better than what you have now?
Because whenever you take a step like that to ditching out of your home with your family that you were born into, that's all you know. You know, you were raised into that. Life sucks, and you see your peers, and you're like, well, those guys' lives are so much better than ours. And then at that point, you're like, this is it for me. This is what I have. This is what I'm. And we're young. We're adolescent. We're even preteens sometimes.
Yeah.
When that starts, and we don't know what the fuck to do. Like, we don't know when, take a step and get out. But at that point in my life, I had already taken a step, and I had already moved out, and life had taken me on into the system, and you were still there. So my way about it was to say, hey, you gotta come like to where I'm at, because there's better stuff here. And it was difficult going through it. And I'm thinking about it now, and I'm like, man, this is a tough subject. But yeah, I wanted you to follow. I wanted you to. For me to walk back there and find you and grab you and pick you up and carry you away with me was difficult for me.
Well, I don't think I ever felt that way, which is why I wanted to hear your side of it first. Because I don't know if you think that I thought that you were like doing it to rub it in. I never thought that, by the way.
No, not to rub it in.
Yeah, well, I always thought when you came back and told me about it, I knew that you were happy, and I knew that you were in a better place than I was at. But I never took it as like, how dare he? I was never mad at you, not even once. I remember thinking like, damn. And I'll be vulnerable by saying this, and I think it's a cool thing. I think you're a brave kid. I think both of us were. My sister, if she was here, Angela, I'd probably tell her the same thing. But I wasn't that kid while you were there. I was the little brother, and you were the brave one. And I think me and you have talked about this a lot, where it's like you took the rat for a lot of things. And so when you left, I remember looking back on it and thinking, it was a brave thing for you to do. And so when you came back and visited, and you told me about all this stuff, I didn't get mad at you. I remember thinking like, damn, like I got to get as brave as Colin was so I can get out of here too. And I didn't know how to be that person. I didn't know how to get out of that house. I didn't know. I guess I didn't understand, because kind of like exactly what you had said. I remember a time in my life when I was young where I thought this is just how families are. Like when he was really abusive and we were always grounded. We were forced to do chores. All this bad stuff happened, right? They were doing drugs in the house. Yeah, it was like it was
like
bad.
A thing that most kids have to deal with.
But
yes,
but it was a different level of chores. When people say chores, they think like do the dishes and then go play your Xbox.
No,
with us, we
were human slaves. We were
literally. I remember living in a room with no posters, white walls, no bookshelves, no toys, barely clothes, and a box spring with a spring sticking out of it, and that's what I used to sleep on. And that's literally like, you know what I mean? And I know you remember that too.
Sometimes there wasn't even a box spring to sleep on.
Yes, and so it was bad. So when I say chores, I mean like we were doing crazy stuff around that house that kids shouldn't have to do, and we did it daily, every day, all the time, nonstop. And that's not even the beginning of the bad stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But I guess the point of my story that I'm saying is there was this bad place, and I remember thinking, this is my life. Like, this is my life. But the other kids probably do this too. And so, I mean, I should just be really good at these chores. And then I remember hanging out at friends' houses and stuff and thinking like, well, why, like, your parents seem a little bit nicer, you get toys and stuff, but like, I guess I didn't understand that what there was happening in our home wasn't okay. I always thought like, this is fine, this is just my family. And then so when you got out and we came back, and I was like, oh shit, like, this doesn't have to be my life, like I can have another life outside of there. And so that's when I first started thinking, how do I get out of this house, as opposed to how do I get really good at these chores.
And then now that I'm an adult and I'm looking back at this story, I think to myself, like, oh yeah, I know with 100% certainty how I would go about this now, because I have experience now. I'm 31 years old, so now I'm like, oh yeah, just easy. Will just,
What would you have done?
Don't grab anything. Just leave with me.
What would you have done differently if you could go back?
If I can go back now as a 31-year-old with all the experience and
yeah,
life that I
if
have
you could
now,
take your mind, but go back in time.
That's not an easy subject to get into. I don't know. I don't think anything would have been the same.
You know what? I struggle with this because I think of a million things I would change, right? And I think about this when people pass away too. I always go like, well, what could I have done differently, maybe to change their lives? And the same way you would do that with a loved one, I do that with myself. And so I often think back, like, what would I change? There's tons of things that should have been changed, but I do find an appreciation and humbleness and calmness in all the chaos. And when I think back to all the crazy stuff, like, it's a genuine, unique life perspective that I'm happy to share on this. You asked me before we started doing the podcast, what is your expectation in doing the podcast? I don't give a damn if I make $1. You know what I mean? The point of it is I need to vent, talk about stuff. I think people might enjoy watching it too. And so that's what I get out of it. So yes, I would go back and think that things would be changed, but I kind of enjoy being who I am today. So I don't think I would do anything to risk that. But I do think if I could coach someone to be a better person, I think we have two parents, or at least one parent and a dude and some random dudes my mom had around and whatever that could be better. But I don't know. I don't think that either one of us did anything wrong, regardless of what we feel as siblings. I feel like if I could go back, I don't know if I'd change anything.